I hear a song. I love you, babe. He's flying, and fresh. Oh, I gotta run and tell somebody. I know that miracles and dreams come true. People do stop and smile.
What if I told you one of R&B's smoothest voices didn't just fade away? He was deliberately silenced. Tony Terry, the soulful crooner behind the timeless hit With You, didn't simply vanish from the spotlight. No, the music industry quietly pushed him aside, leaving fans wondering, where exactly did Tony Terry go? And why was someone so talented erased from mainstream R&B? It wasn't drugs or scandal that ended his reign. It was greed, sabotage, and a shocking betrayal from the people he trusted most. Buckle up, because the real story behind Tony Terry's disappearance will change the way you look at the music business forever. Most people assume Tony Terry vanished due to the classic tale of a fleeting music career. You know, that old story about a one-hit wonder who couldn't keep up with the industry. It's easy to buy into. One day you're hearing his voice on every radio station, and the next, he's nowhere to be found. Fans thought, well, maybe Tony just burned out. After all, not everyone survives the harsh realities of fame. But here's the thing. Tony Terry wasn't some flash-in-the-pan artist. He had genuine talent, soulful charm, and hits that defined a generation. Songs like With You and Everlasting Love were massive, dominating weddings and romantic mixtapes everywhere. So, if he wasn't a victim of burnout, what actually happened? Here's the real deal. The narrative of Tony Terry quietly fading away is completely wrong. It's a myth carefully crafted by an industry that didn't want you digging too deeply. Why? Because admitting the truth would expose their ugly secrets. Tony Terry wasn't forgotten, he was intentionally erased. But how and why would the industry silence one of its brightest stars? Hold tight, because what you're about to hear next changes everything. Here's what the music industry doesn't want you to know. Tony Terry didn't fall off. He was pushed. While Tony was busy topping charts and melting hearts, behind-the-scenes forces were quietly plotting his downfall. Think this sounds far-fetched? Let's break it down. At his peak, Terry was signed to Epic Records, a label notorious for catapulting artists to fame, but equally infamous for dropping them cold when profits dipped even slightly. Insiders from the era have spilled tea on Epic's sketchy strategy: invest heavily in an artist up front, then suddenly cut funding to test if the artist could float on their own. For Tony, that meant going from platinum hits and lavish music videos to a budget so thin it would make dollar store ramen seem extravagant. Tony himself opened up in rare interviews, describing how his label suspiciously stopped promoting his singles and albums overnight. Executives began ignoring his calls, stopped booking critical appearances, and sabotaged album rollouts at the worst possible times. Even more shocking, Tony revealed there were executives actively encouraging radio DJs to move his hits off their playlists, literally pulling his music from rotation. Why would a record label sabotage their own successful artist? Two words: money and control. Tony started asking uncomfortable questions about royalties and finances, which put him on a collision course with label bigwigs who weren't about to let an artist get too independent or too rich without their say-so. But sabotage was just the start, because Tony Terry was about to face even darker battles, and it wasn't just industry greed he'd have to worry about. Now here's where things get really messy. If you thought the sabotage was bad, wait until you hear about the money. Tony Terry didn't just face career setbacks. He found himself trapped in a web of shady financial mismanagement that left him broke and betrayed by the very people who promised to protect him. Imagine this. Your songs are playing at every wedding in America. Your voice is literally the soundtrack to people's happiest days. Yet somehow, your bank account is emptier than a Chick-fil-A on Sunday? How could a chart-topping artist end up financially ruined? Easy answer: a toxic cocktail of greedy managers, exploitative contracts, and straight-up theft disguised as industry standard. Tony opened up years later about discovering his finances had been mishandled on a catastrophic scale. Managers and label reps allegedly pocketed profits from album sales and live performances, leaving him with pennies compared to what he truly earned. Insiders whisper that at one point, Tony was shocked to find himself facing massive debts, bills piling up faster than hits on a Drake album. His reaction? Pure disbelief? After all, wasn't success supposed to secure your financial future? But when Tony confronted the suits responsible for his financial nightmare, their response was colder than Kanye at the Grammys. They blamed him. They gaslighted Tony, accusing him of overspending and mismanaging his lifestyle, conveniently ignoring their own roles in stripping away his hard-earned cash. Tony wasn't buying it, though. He fought back, pushing for transparency about his money, and that's when the industry doubled down, determined to silence him completely. Tony Terry's story isn't just about a career lost, it's about financial betrayal at the highest levels, where trust became Tony's biggest mistake. But money wasn't the only thing that fell apart. Behind closed doors, tension was boiling over, and the drama was about to explode even further. If you think financial drama was Tony Terry's only headache, buckle up, because behind the velvet curtain of R&B's smoothest hits, Tony was knee-deep in controversy and backstage battles that make reality TV look tame. See, once Tony started digging into where his money went, things got heated, fast. It wasn't long before whispers of his clashes with label executives started leaking out, and the industry gossip machine went wild. Sources close to Tony said meetings with the label quickly turned into shouting matches, doors slamming louder than a Cardi B clapback, and Tony didn't back down. He stood his ground, demanding answers about royalties, promotion budgets, and mysterious fees siphoned off his earnings. One particularly explosive incident involved Epic Records outright refusing to fund a critical music video for Tony's newest single, a move that insiders insist was calculated sabotage. Without a video, radio play stalled, and the song flopped faster than a TikTok trend. Tony later revealed he believed this sabotage was intentional, retaliation for questioning their business practices. But it wasn't just label executives who turned their backs. Even fellow artists and producers distanced themselves, afraid to get caught up in the drama. Tony's phone stopped ringing, friendships dissolved overnight, and rumors swirled about his supposed difficult attitude, a classic tactic labels use to silence outspoken artists. In reality, Tony wasn't difficult, he was determined, but determination meant becoming a target. Label insiders spread damaging narratives, painting him as uncooperative and demanding, conveniently ignoring their role in his struggles. And unfortunately for Tony, in an industry where relationships mean everything, his outspoken nature made enemies powerful enough to end careers. But even as his industry connections collapsed around him, Tony wasn't about to go quietly. Instead, he planned an independent comeback, one that would either restore his legacy or seal his fate once and for all. Now, here's the juicy part that most fans completely missed. Tony Terry didn't just accept defeat and vanish, he actually attempted a comeback that went about as smoothly as your first time driving stick shift. After being burned badly by Epic Records, Tony decided enough was enough. He ditched the big label drama and went full indie, convinced his voice and fan base could carry him back to the spotlight. He quietly dropped new singles and projects, hoping to recapture his glory days. But here's the kicker. You probably didn't even know these releases existed. Why? Because Tony found out the hard way that the industry doesn't forgive easily. And it certainly doesn't forget. Insiders revealed that powerful executives, still bitter about Tony's pushback, quietly blacklisted him behind the scenes. Radio stations mysteriously refused to play his tracks, promoters canceled bookings at the last minute, and streaming platforms buried his songs deeper than the Mariana Trench. Despite his undeniable talent, every indie move Tony made seemed cursed from the start. His comeback efforts sank quicker than an ice cube in hot coffee. Not because the music was bad, but because someone wanted him silenced. Frustrated and financially stretched thin, Tony's independent attempts left him barely treading water, facing a career crossroads he never expected. Publicly, Tony remained optimistic, still smiling in interviews and pushing his music passionately. But privately, he battled doubt and exhaustion, realizing the harsh truth. Talent alone wasn't enough when powerful forces wanted you gone. And if career sabotage and financial ruin weren't already enough, Tony's struggles soon started seeping into his personal life, creating turmoil he never saw coming. You'd think Tony Terry's personal life would at least give him some peace amidst the industry chaos, right? Well, think again, because behind the smooth vocals and charming smile was a man drowning in personal drama that rivaled his professional nightmares. As Tony's career began to crumble, the pressure didn't just stay at the studio, it crept into his home life, turning it upside down. Rumors started swirling about trouble in paradise, whispers of marital tensions that spread faster than gossip in a hair salon. Sources close to Tony hinted that financial instability and relentless industry stress were pushing his marriage to the breaking point, sparking heated arguments and sleepless nights. Now, let's be clear, every couple fights, but when you're an R&B sensation whose voice is synonymous with love and romance, even minor personal issues become headline-worthy gossip. Suddenly, Tony wasn't just battling executives and empty bank accounts. He was battling tabloids and internet forums, each speculating wildly about his private affairs. Friends began leaking bits of information to the press, fueling the flames of rumors and turning Tony's personal struggles into public spectacle. But Tony kept most of it bottled up, desperately trying to maintain his picture-perfect image. After all, nobody wants to see the guy who sang With You caught up in messy family drama. Unfortunately, keeping up appearances only intensified the pressure, creating a cycle of anxiety and isolation that ate away at his mental health. And just when Tony thought he'd hit rock bottom, things took yet another unexpected turn. Forced out of mainstream R&B, haunted by personal troubles, Tony made a choice nobody expected, one that would define the next chapter of his life and reveal exactly where he is today. So, after all that drama, industry sabotage, money mismanagement, and personal turmoil, what actually happened to Tony Terry? Where is the soulful crooner today, and how's he holding up? Well, buckle in, because Tony Terry didn't vanish into thin air. He transformed. After years of battling the music industry and its toxic politics, Tony found refuge exactly where you might least expect it: gospel music and musical theater. Yep, Mr. Romantic Ballads himself swapped his smooth R&B vibes for uplifting gospel harmonies and Broadway-style performances, giving his career a second wind far away from mainstream record labels. Today, Tony performs regularly on smaller stages and intimate venues, wowing audiences who still adore his iconic voice. He's even become something of a hometown hero, headlining local festivals, charity events, and regional theater productions. Not exactly Madison Square Garden, but hey, it beats dealing with shady executives stealing your royalties. Financially, Tony's doing okay now, having rebuilt himself through modest yet consistent earnings. His net worth today hovers around a comfortable $3 million. Not bad for someone the industry tried so hard to bury. More importantly, Tony now openly shares his experiences, warning young artists about the dangers lurking behind those shiny record contracts. Legacy-wise, Tony Terry will always be remembered for his soulful classics, especially With You, which still dominates wedding playlists over 3 decades later. But his real legacy goes beyond music. It's about resilience and surviving an industry designed to exploit its brightest stars. So next time you slow dance to With You, remember Tony Terry wasn't just an R&B sensation. He was a survivor who defied the odds, refused to be silenced, and ultimately rewrote his own ending. But Tony's story raises an even bigger question. How many other artists out there were quietly erased by the music industry's dark tactics? And how long until their stories finally get told? Tony Terry's story isn't just another forgotten chapter of R&B, it's a harsh reminder of how ruthless the music industry can really be. The sabotage, betrayal, and struggles Tony endured should make all of us rethink the glamorous image we have of fame. Sure, With You might be playing at weddings worldwide, but behind those sweet notes lies a cautionary tale of talent overshadowed by greed and manipulation. But here's the good news. Tony Terry didn't stay down. He turned tragedy into triumph, finding peace and purpose away from the spotlight that once tried to destroy him. He remains a living symbol of resilience, proving that sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving and thriving. And remember, the next time an artist suddenly disappears, maybe it's time to ask yourself, did they fall off or were they quietly pushed aside? If Tony's story shocked you, imagine how many other artists' stories are still waiting to be revealed. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep your eyes wide open because the music industry's darkest secrets are often hiding in plain sight.